It's Wednesday, January 19. This is the news on PBCJ. I'm Simone Absalom Gale. Consumers will see a slight increase in their water, sewage and service rates for the February billing cycle. The National Water Commission says the adjustment has become necessary because of an increase in the company's electricity costs. NWC says the price adjustment mechanism PAM rate has been increased by 4.07%. Legal and Constitutional Affairs Minister Malahoo Forte signaled that a major revision of the island's legal system is coming. In her maiden address in this newly formed ministry, she told members of Parliament on Tuesday that her team will be taking on the chaos that currently obtains in the legislative process. Her explanation is in this report.
This is what the Minister of Legal and Constitutional Affairs, Malahoo Forte, said about the creation of the new ministry.
The creation may be regarded as the most serious attempt by any head of government to revisit holistically the legal and constitutional infrastructure of the Jamaica nation state since the last time this work was set before us was on the cusp and in the immediate aftermath of nationhood.
She notes that currently the long title, the Memoranda of Objectives and the transitional provisions in laws are not included in revised legislation, nor do they indicate which provisions have been repealed.
Legal service units, what we call the LSUs, within the ministries will take on a more prominent role in conjunction with the policy units. All ministries, Madam Speaker, will be required to work within settled time frame, even and especially when matters are sensitive. The current practice, where as deadlines approach, the matters are then launched with the OCP or the LRD or the AGC, not leaving those departments, especially the OCP, enough time to do their share of the work when the MDAs had already maximized their time in their units will not be carried forward.
Malahoo Forte says the entire system of law revision needs revamping.
Specific knowledge, skill sets, and competency levels are required to revise laws. And the system must be designed and resourced to make it fit for purpose. We must reduce the time lag between enactment and inclusion in the revised laws of Jamaica to ensure that the information provided, whether online or elsewhere, is up to date and accurate.
The ministry will establish and have oversight for the government's legislative agenda and legal and constitutional reform.
2 internet service access points will be commissioned by the Universal Service Fund in Clarendon this Wednesday, one at Brixton Hill Primary and Infant School and the other at Garloki Primary and Junior High School. The USF says 10 new community internet service access points will be established across Jamaica by the end of next month. The community internet access points are usually established in collaboration with community organizations and are funded by the USF. Local government elections were postponed by the government in 2020 owing to concerns brought on by the ongoing COVID-19 pandemic. Both the lower and upper houses of Parliament voted to have the elections pushed back to a date no later than February 27, 2022. On Monday, a handful of residents of the Bamboo River community in Morant Bay Division, St. Thomas, made it clear who they were throwing their support behind. They lauded Wilbert Walker for his commitment to the division.
And if we not get Walker, we not vote no Walker, no vote. And Walker is for the people.
Mr. Walker has been so good to us, right? I've kept, this is my second year of treat in Bamboo River, and the only person I see is Mr. Walker. He's always there for the kids. You can get him out of bed any hours to do all homework for the pitney them, right? Anything, pampers, anything, he's always there for us. He work hard, so hard for the people, right? He's all over. He's not the man for the color, he's the man for the people.
The World Health Organization, WHO, is warning that the high global COVID-19 levels will likely lead to new strains as the virus mutates. Speaking at a Geneva briefing, WHO's COVID-19 technical lead, Maria Van Kerkhove, threw cold water on speculations in some quarters that Omicron will be the last variant.
But we do know that the tests that are in use right now remain sensitive to the Omicron variant. They can detect this variant, including the antigen-based tests, the PCR tests, and saliva-based tests that are out on the market. As you pointed out in your question, it's not the time to make a massive shift to recommend one or the other. What we really need to do at a global level is to ensure that testing is accessible, is affordable, and is reliable in all countries.
The call for countries to make testing more affordable to the public was repeated as well.
And that is not the case because this virus is circulating at a very intense level around the world. You will see in our weekly epidemiologic update that will be published in a few hours that there's another 20% increase in cases in the last 7 days, with almost 19 million cases that have been reported to us. And again, that's a true underestimate of what is actually circulating around. And the deaths are holding steady around 45,000 deaths per week. And that shouldn't be happening because we have tools at hand. And so it is not the time to give up on the comprehensive strategy that we have outlined, that many countries are using, and as Mike has said, implement them in different ways. But the goals of reducing severe disease and death remain.
Meanwhile, the WHO says some 18 million new cases were reported in the last few days. Senior WHO official Dr. Bruce Aylward says high levels of transmission gives the virus more opportunity to replicate and mutate, rising the risk that another variant will emerge. Time now to look at the shifts and turns in the financial markets. Gabriel Thompson navigates the ins and outs in this quick business report.
In foreign exchange trading for Tuesday, January 18, the US dollar sold for an average $156.01. The Canadian dollar ended trading at $126.72. The pound sterling traded for $213.24, and the euro sold for an average $180.15. In Tuesday's trading session, the following reflect the movement of the JSE indices. The JSE index declined by 674 points to close at under 400,000 units. The junior market index advanced by 15 points to close at over 3,000 units. The JSE combined market index declined by 473 points to close at over 400,000 units, and the JSE All Jamaican Composite Index declined by 1,167 points to close at over 400,000 units. Overall market activity resulted from trading in 100 stocks, of which 38 advanced, 49 declined, and 13 traded firm. Stocks advanced for Access Financial Services Limited, AMG Packaging and Paper Company Limited, and Burita Investments Limited. Stocks declined for 1834 Investments Limited, Blue Power Group Limited, and CAC 2000 Limited. Trading firm were CAC 2000 9.5% preference shares, JMMB Group 7% preference shares, and JMMB Group 7.25% preference shares. Spurtree Spices Jamaica Limited was the volume leader with over 10.6 million units, followed by Lasco Manufacturing Limited with over 2.3 million units, and Wigton Wind Farm Limited ordinary shares with over 2.2 million units. In market data for oil, prices rose for a fourth day on Wednesday after a fire on a pipeline from Iraq to Turkey briefly stopped flows, increasing concerns about an already tight supply outlook. Brent crude futures rose 80 cents or 0.9% to $88.31 a barrel, adding to a 1.2% jump in the previous session. West Texas Intermediate crude futures climbed $1.06 or 1.2% to $86.49 a barrel. And with that, we close this Wednesday edition of the Business Report Inside the News on PBCJ. I'm Gabrielle Thompson. Pleasant viewing.
We are now in the peak of the cold and flu season, which is between December and February. This is a time where there will be more cases of influenza, cold, or even seasonal allergies. A side effect of this can be swollen tonsils. In today's Living Healthy, Dr. Heather Lawson-Myers continues her talk with ear, nose, and throat specialist, Dr. Francis Barnett. Find out how to treat the tonsillitis, especially in children.
You know, I always hear the word adenoids, but I link it to tonsils and adenoids.
Right.
So it's possible that the adenoids are problematic, but not the tonsils.
Interesting that you said that the tonsils and adenoids are the same type of tissue. They are lymphoid tissue, and so often we do expect that if one is big, the other is big, but it's not always the case. It's not always the case.
So I have $1 million question for you.
Okay.
Because just as how I look up noses, I look and see the back of throats all day long.
Right.
And it is so common for me to look, especially children in Jamaica at the back, and you see these two bulges, the tonsils and the uvula sticking down, and between those three entities, there's literally no space.
Right.
And oftentimes when I question the parents of the child, I'm told, well, the doctor has them on medication, and I don't know at what point we move from saying medication is not enough to doing something a little more involved. Can you talk me through that a little bit?
Right. These pictures that we're looking at, these swellings are the tonsils, and the tonsils, especially in kids, can cause two primary problems. One is obstruction, and this obstruction tends to affect the child mostly at night while sleeping.
Yes.
A blockage,
okay.
Right? And so the child is sleeping because during sleep the muscles at the back of the throat relax.
Yes.
And I tell my patients that it's similar to sucking on a straw, and the straw collapses as you take a deep breath in. The back of the throat collapses, and so airflow is reduced. And this airflow, because you hear it struggling through snoring.
Yes.
The sound that it causes. This obstruction can lead to total cessation or no flow at all, and we call that apnea. So some kids and adults have something called obstructive sleep apnea. And this can lead to a variety of symptoms. In kids, it has been shown that it may lead to attention deficit issues.
Yes, I've heard that.
And in kids, it can also, they lose their concentration during school and learning, and may be left behind a little. And so when kids have this obstructive problem, then this thing is serious. The other problem that large tonsils can cause is infection. And this recurrent infection may lead to a sore throat or identify itself as a sore throat. And this can lead to a loss in productivity. So kids don't get to go to school as much as they should, and adults don't get to go to work as much as they should. Unfortunately, the size of the tonsil, some people just have big tonsils.
Yes.
And it's not really a reflection of an ongoing infection or inflammation. And so antibiotics are unlikely to reduce the size of it, especially if there is no evidence of an infection at the time. And so, unfortunately, when kids have an obstructive problem or a recurrent infective problem, then a tonsillectomy can benefit them significantly. Right? I should mention, though, that in adults, which is something on the rise, is tonsillar cancer. And tonsils can harbor cancer within them that are not obvious on examination. And something very important for adults, if there are tonsils that they're asymmetric, meaning one tonsil is bigger than the other, it should be taken very seriously. Yes. Because tonsil cancer is increasing in incidence or becoming more common.
Well, I feel like I've been in class all morning. I've learned so much. The otolaryngologist is an ENT, as we know it. We really should focus on what is happening when we can't breathe. 18% more air is taken in when you breathe through your nose as opposed to mouth breathing. The air is warmed. There are filters in your nose that clean the air, so nose breathing is a far healthier thing than mouth breathing. And if those tonsils at the back of the throat are enlarged, we need to check it out. Thank you so much today.
It was a pleasure.
Yes, it was awesome. Blessings.
Thanks for having me.
What a wealth of information from Dr. Barnett. So we need to keep those nasal passages clear so we can breathe properly. If you're stuffy all the time, it's not good. We need to find out why and fix it. If your child is constantly snoring loudly and it happens time after time, it may be time for those tonsils to be removed. Listen, I'm out of here. Check us the next time. Facebook, YouTube, Instagram, and our LFD website.
In regional news, we begin in Grenada, where political leader of the National Democratic Congress, Dickon Mitchell, believes the country should have a fixed date for general elections and not give political leaders the power to call elections when they please for their political gain. More from GBN News.
The United States of America presidential polls are held every 4 years on the first Tuesday in November. They have what is called a fixed date election. That's not the case here in Grenada, where voters go to the polls every 5 years at a date selected by the incumbent party.
Because you don't know when I ring the bell. I have a bell right in my pocket. You never know. I heard you said change is coming. Change is really coming, leader of the opposition.
That was Prime Minister Dr. Keith Mitchell speaking in Parliament during the 2022 budget debate as he stepped away from matters of finance to address politics. His announcement has long been a source of concern for opposition party representatives who have clamored for a fixed date as applies in the U.S. The National Democratic Congress political leader Dickon Mitchell says any ruling administration having the power to call general elections when they determine should be a thing of the past.
The system where someone can say I have a bell in my pocket and I can ring it at any time is outdated. Frankly, it's counterproductive to democracy, and it doesn't lead to good governance because it essentially means you're exploiting the system for political advantage. So as a nation, we need to talk about issues such as having a fixed date for election so that the date is known in advance, everybody knows it, and that all political organizations and persons who want to take part in the political process can work backwards from that date, rather than being in a position where the party in power always has the advantage of choosing to call elections, the date for elections at its convenience. One set of people aren't entitled to govern the country. we need to ensure that we create a culture within our political system that says, as I've said, you serve and then you move on so that other citizens can serve. You can't hold offices and take them to your grave, right? We don't operate a system of a monarchy.
The NDC's Mitchell says despite being at a disadvantage, he is confident that his party can win the upcoming general election, which is constitutionally due in 2023. However, he said the ultimate decision lies with Grenadians.
So snap or long, as I said, we are confident that we can win the election, not because we say so, because we think ultimately it's the citizens of the country who will make that determination. The citizens elect the MPs and have the right to remove them if they are dissatisfied with their performance. So let me make this clear. Elections are not about the opposition. Elections are about the citizens of a country making and giving their opinion as to whether or not they're satisfied with the governance of the country. So an election is really on the referendum, will be a referendum, and the election, when it's called, will be a referendum on the governance of the new National Party and whether the citizens of Grenada, having given it a unanimous, overwhelming mandate of 15-0 twice, back to back, whether the citizens are happy with what they've received, having given them that mandate.
Dickon Mitchell was speaking on GBN's To The Point program on Tuesday. For GBN News, I am Rena Pett Thomas reporting.
The Trinidad and Tobago Taxi Drivers Network is calling on authorities to remove restrictions for drivers traversing the Freeport, Chase Village and Monroe Road route utilizing the flyovers. The network's president says new changes are putting members at a disadvantage. Ayana Carter has more.
Mr. Acosta explained that signs placed by the Ministry of Works and Transport say that between 6 and 9 a.m. on weekdays, vehicles except PTSE buses will not be allowed to re-enter the highway from the northbound flyovers.
As taxi drivers, we believe that this move would negatively affect us and the traveling public that we transport on a daily basis, due to the fact that they are now also allowing the PTSE bus to go down the flyover and drop out their passengers and cross over the intersection and go onto the highway. We are saying you are putting us as taxi drivers at a great disadvantage because of the fact that we have to go down there and now go into the traffic and come back out in traffic.
He explained that taxi drivers have resorted to dropping passengers on the highway as a time-saving measure and avoiding peak time traffic. However, the trek down the flyover to their destination is unsafe for pedestrians. Assistant Secretary of the organization, David Mack, offered some suggestions to the authorities.
Lane on the highway itself, or convert even the shoulder in that between for 2 hours or 3 hours to a high capacity lane that will take up people transporting a lot of people. I mean, if somebody gets on that and they do not fit into that requirement, then throw the book at them so hard that they never drive again.
Mr. Acosta noted that his organization was not consulted before the signs were erected.
At the end of the day, we are self-employed, right? And time is money for us, right? When you are telling us that we have to go down inside traffic to come back out in traffic, we find that very disruptive to our workplace, right? It is unfair for the government to put something in place and one side of the transportation industry is profiting from it and the other one is being sidelined.
The president noted that he would like to meet with authorities at the ministry to discuss solutions in the best interest of both taxi drivers and passengers. Ayana Carter, TTT News.
Despite opposition from government ministers and the Coalition of Concerned Citizens, Grand Bahamians will see an increase in their electricity bills in April. The Grand Bahama Port Authority approved a recent request by the Grand Bahamas Power Company for the rate adjustment. Megan Shepherd reports.
In a statement issued by the Grand Bahama Port Authority, the regulators note that the Grand Bahama Power Company initially applied for an increase of 6.3%, and they are pleased to issue the final rate at 3.3%. A cabinet subcommittee was formed late last year to address this impending decision. Minister for Grand Bahama Ginger Moxie stating that while she is against any increase for the people of Grand Bahama, she believes their continued meetings contributed to the rate approval adjustment.
We did meet with the Grand Bahama Port Authority and the Grand Bahama Power Company to express our strong stance against any type of rate increase. We note in the press statement and in a letter that was sent yesterday that there was an increase, approved increase from, but it was reduced from the 6.3% to the 3.3%, and we believe that this is based on our strong position.
President of the Coalition of Concerned Citizens, Pastor Eddie Victor, calling it another sad day for Grand Bahama. He says following the government's clear stance and the outcry of residents, he believes there should have been only one decision made.
It's the worst economic time. The Grand Bahamas is still in major recovery, major. Also, you are increasing the rates when the power company is making money and record profits. You see, everything doesn't add up.
Pastor Victor adding that he has been fighting for lower electricity rates for over 7 years now, but to no avail. He believes the increases have been to the detriment of the island.
We have seen is that they continue to increase the cost of electricity. And there's no intention by the power company, neither the regulator, to bring down the cost of electricity, because their decisions has caused many investors to turn away from Grand Bahama.
Reporting for Our News, I'm Megan Shepard.
We lead off today's sports with some positive news. Minister with responsibility for sport, Olivia Babsy Grange, has hailed Jamaica's historic bobsled qualifications to the 2022 Winter Olympics in Beijing, China. On Monday, Team Jamaica tweeted that their 4-man bobsled team secured a spot at the 2022 Winter Games. It's the first time Team Jamaica has qualified in 3 Olympic bobsled events: 4-man, 2-man, and women's monobob. There's a possibility that Jamaica could compete in a 4th bobsled event, as the 2-woman team missed out on a tiebreaker, but could still compete as a first alternate if one of the qualifying nations withdraws. Marlon Samuels tells us more.
Speaking from her offices on Tuesday morning, Minister Grange says Jamaica's team to the 2022 Winter Olympics in Beijing, China, demonstrates that nothing is impossible.
These are the first Olympics in which Jamaica will be represented in 3 bobsled events, in addition to the women's monobob. We've qualified for the 2-man event, and for the first time in 24 years, we're back in the 4-man competition. We really have a lot to be grateful about, and we have to, Miss Lou would say, clap yourself. You know, we really have to be happy about that. So I want to congratulate Sean Wayne, Nimroy, Ashley, Matthew, and Rolando, and to also thank the coaching staff, and to thank everyone who has played his or her part.
Minister Grange told the bobsled team during a news conference that Jamaica's growing winter sports program is inspirational.
This generation and others to come will look up to you and be inspired by you because of your unlikely presence at the Winter Games representing a tropical country and doing well. You really have to be congratulated, and you're an inspiration to the entire Jamaica.
Minister Grange also used the opportunity to highlight Jamaica's success in other winter sports, namely skiing.
We're also making history in skiing, as you all know. For the first time at the Winter Olympics, Jamaica will have a competitor in the alpine skiing. And I want to use the opportunity to congratulate Benjamin Alexander on this wonderful achievement. I don't know if you all know Benjamin is a DJ and a selector as well, Jamaican music. So it's just a great vibe all around.
The ministry has been supporting Jamaica's winter sports program through direct funding and provision of equipment. The 2022 Beijing Winter Olympic Games begin February 4. Reporting for the news on PBCJ, I am Marlon Samuels.
And that's our package. You've just watched the news on PBCJ, the People's Station.